Season 3, Episode 106, Cold-Blooded Encounters.
Welcome to the Intern Whisperer Live, the show all about the future of work.
Coming up on this episode of Intern Whisperer Live, our show tonight, we have Kaylin and Malachi, founders and owners of Cold-Blooded Encounters.
So, Kaylin and Malachi, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
We're just keep going.
Thank you.
Howdy.
So, anyway, welcome to the show. Now, you are all about reptiles, and you've brought some in the studio with us. And I wish we had done this as a behind-the-scenes thing. That giant frog you had on the table, It jumped and hit the floor.
Yeah, he's pretty strong. He can jump
I don't know.
pretty
Can
high.
you pull him up here so people can see him? Because I know that our show, we are live. We are here.
What?
Yeah,
So.
This is Guac. He's a African bullfrog.
Okay, he's not going to jump out of your hands, right?
No, he's good right now. But yeah, he's an African bullfrog, or they're also known as pixie frogs. They can get up to 5 pounds right now. I'd say he weighs close to 3, so he's not even full grown yet. But he is pretty big, pretty.
Look at
awesome
that
frog.
back leg.
Boy, that is huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty massive.
Okay,
Almost
so
looks-
when people eat frogs, that's the frog they must be eating.
Oh no, maybe in Africa, but we
never had a frog
American
like that
bullfrogs.
big.
This is an African bullfrog.
Yeah. So you said he came from Africa. How much does a frog like that cost if you're trying to buy it as a pet? Do you know?
In the pet trade, I paid about $250 for him. Some
Wow.
people can find them for cheaper, but yeah, he eats a lot of rats because they're high in protein. But he also eats. I like to substitute it with a lot of insects, as in like crickets and roaches and stuff like that as well. But he can eat anything. Like
Now, I remember when I first met you, you told me that this frog has teeth. We were talking about it off the air. So for our listeners, what kind of teeth is it? I'm picturing a full human set of teeth in his mouth.
No, now he's one of the only 2 species of bullfrogs that actually have teeth. They just have like 2 teeth up top and then 2 teeth up on the bottom of the front of their mouth, just like to grip their prey.
So I know we went right into the frog, but we didn't talk about why you started this business and how it all came about. And you guys are brothers.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
why don't you tell our listeners about, because this is always about an entrepreneurial story here. So what is the story about why you created Cold-Blooded Encounters? And so our listeners know, these animals go to schools where there's children because none of them are poisonous. So it's not, maybe it's cold-blooded as what we're thinking, like it's going to harm us.
Yeah, it's cold. They're cold-blooded animals, but
Right.
yeah. So basically, like ever since I was a kid, I always liked catching like snakes and lizards, everything around the house, because I lived in the woods. So I would catch all the animals I could. Grew up watching like Steve Irwin and Jeff Corrin and all them. And as I got older, I started to like snakes more. And the more that I started to like snakes, I liked big snakes. I was like, man, like I want to get the longest snake species in the world, and that's a reticulated python. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a reticulated python. And then I was like, man, I got to get a permit just to get this snake. And then in order to get that permit to have that snake, you have to have a reason. And in the state of Florida, it's for either breeding or like educational purposes. So I was like, okay, I'll just start an educational business and just share my love with the rest of the world. He's a couple years younger than me. And I was just like, hey, man, you got to help me do my shows and stuff, because he likes to come over, hang out with the animals and stuff all the time. So it's just fun, having my little brother tag along with me to go do my shows and hang out with my animals.
What is the longest snake that you have?
The longest snake I have is my reticulated python. He's still a baby, so he's about 8 foot right now.
8
So,
foot.
yeah, he's about 8 foot.
8 feet, guys.
When he grows, how long is he going to be?
I mean, the longest snake ever recorded was a reticulated python, and it was over 33 foot long.
Wow.
They get about 25 foot long.
Okay, so what type of education? You talked about you have to have a license to do this, but what is the education that you have to have? Or are you self-taught? Is there a school? Do you go to zoo school?
You can do plenty of things. You can, go to college for it, or you can just go be an intern at like zoos and stuff. But that usually requires college. But me personally, I just did all my learning like off of just like self-research. So yeah, I would say I'm more self-taught, but there's plenty of people out there way more educated in it than me that took those extra steps. But I do what I do.
Well, how long have you been doing this?
I've had cold-blooded encounters for it's just a little over a year now. But reptiles, like it's been my hobby since, I was a kid. Like I always had something. So, but just as I grew older and that passion grew, so did my collection.
How are your day-to-day duties split up in terms of how the business is shared and how you operate together? Who's got?
Well, it's my business, and it's just my little brother. He helps me. Like he's there for everything.
Exactly.
We'll be big one day. We'll have a zoo one day.
I know you mentioned the frog stays in an aquarium and that kind of thing. They're all aquariums basically. So, or how are they kept?
It just depends on the animal and the space that they need. Like I have some outdoor enclosures, like they have pens that we build outside. Other ones are just like sections of the yard, just like sectioned off for like my tortoises and stuff like that. And then other than that, everything's in aquariums and just different types of enclosures around the house.
How long does it take to care for these? This looks like, do they all eat on the same day, or do you have to rotate?
Yeah, I rotate it because I like the snakes. They only have to eat one time a week. Some of them are only like once every other week. But then the lizards, they have to eat. Some eat every day. Some eat every couple days. Tortoises, same thing. So it's just I have to rotate the feeding days.
Well, how can people find you?
You can find my Facebook page for Cold Blooded Encounters, which is the business, on Facebook at the Cold Blooded Encounters. And you can also find me on Instagram at Reptile Guy Kai. That is at reptile_guy_Kai.
You mean G-U-Y? Guy?
Guy Kai.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
GUYKAI. So, yeah, you can find me at those two places, and they'll lead you to other ways to get a hold of me as well.
Season 3, Episode 107, Martin Luther King Tribute.
That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
What do you know about Martin Luther King?
I know as Martin Luther King as a man that he was a great man. He believed in the equal rights of people. He also believed in just making a change and the difference in the world as well as his own community.
Martin Luther King was a good man. He had a dream. Basically, he had a dream that everyone would be equal.
He represented a big movement in the United States.
He was a leader. That's the most important thing I know.
Martin Luther King was a civil rights leader. He was a revolutionary. Instead of using violence, he used his words.
He did a lot for African Americans. He had a lot of willpower and determined.
He set an example for everybody that we should all be together, that we're all different, but we can all coexist at the same time.
He's a social hero.
I know that he was a good man, and he did everything in his power that he could to make his dream of everybody being equal as he could.
And he's one of the most recognized people on earth today.
So, celebrating Black History Month, let's remember Martin Luther King Jr. His birthday has become a national holiday. Most Americans know the words of his most famous speech, "I have a dream." However, as we reflect on the man who sought to unify our country, we found there was an untold story about him that many do not know. Some of those facts are perhaps avoided because they're uncomfortable. Others are merely lost in the great expanse of information available about him as a man and now as an icon. King was born Michael Luther King in Atlanta on January 15th, 1929, one of the 3 children of Martin Luther King Sr., pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, and Alberta Williams King, a former school teacher. He was renamed Martin when he was about 6 years old.
How much of Martin Luther King's speech do you know?
I have a dream, and then that's about it.
Only the I have a dream part.
I used to know the whole entire speech, but I haven't actually gone back to really read it as much as I used to.
I kind of feel bad not remembering most of it, but I don't know if a lot of us do.
You know, you can argue that we wouldn't know Martin Luther King Jr. maybe at all without his parents' influence. You mentioned he was born Michael Luther King. In fact, his dad was Michael too. They both changed their name to Martin after Martin Luther, who was the Protestant reformer way back in the 1500s of the Christian church. And then he was part of 3 generations, Martin Luther King Jr., 3 generations of pastors at Ebenezer Baptist throughout his life and his childhood. And in his childhood, his parents' influence through him is really what you hear reflected in his speeches, in his work. Martin Luther King Sr. was active in early civil rights movement surrounding area of Atlanta, Georgia. In addition to being a pastor, King Sr. was the president of the local NAACP chapter, and in that role, he led a successful effort to equalize the salaries of white and black teachers in Atlanta. Both Dr. King's mother and father were very involved in Martin's young life, and they didn't hide the truth about the realities of segregation and prejudice that Martin Luther King would face. Martin Luther King Jr. gave an interview in 1961 on the television show Face to Face, and he talked about a couple of the events of his childhood that led up to the famous Montgomery boycott. He talked about his first brush with segregation and prejudice when his 2 best friends in the neighborhood, they were both white, they would play together every day, and all of a sudden one day they just stopped. His 2 friends wouldn't come to the door anymore. They would give him excuses when Martin came over to play. And when King Jr. asked his mother why his best friends wouldn't play with him, his mother explained about racial segregation, about prejudice, about racism, and that was why he couldn't play with his best friends anymore. Dr. King remembers that his mother told him to never think he was less than anyone else and to always remember that he is just as valuable as every other person. You would hear that in his speeches later on. But this was the first time he experienced racial prejudice. When Martin Luther King Jr. was a little older, he was out with his father. They were out for a drive. They were coming home. A police officer pulls him over. The police officer addressed King Jr.'s father as boy. And as the story goes, Martin Luther King Sr. looked down to his son, Jr., and he said, "You see my son here? He is a boy. I am a man." And Martin Luther King's dad refused to cooperate with the officer until he would be addressed as a grown man. And so on one hand, you've got young Martin Luther King growing up with all this racial prejudice, and then on the other hand, you've got the influence of his parents who lived out their values. And I think one thing that gets lost today, it's really staggering to think that all this happened within a lifetime. You know, some of our parents and grandparents who are alive were alive at this time. This is really such recent history for America. Our country is so different, and I think in a lot of ways for the better, because in part of due to Martin Luther King Jr., but we forget. Martin Luther King, when he grew up, he wasn't able to go to the local swimming pool. He wasn't allowed to go to public parks. There was only one high school in all of Atlanta for black children, and that high school had to serve over 200,000 black families. He wasn't allowed to sit at the counter in the drugstores or the corner markets. He would witness police brutality. He would witness acts of terrorism by the Ku Klux Klan and hate crimes. And, you know, we think that after the Civil War ended and the slaves were freed, that everything was hunky-dory. But still, you still had the hatred. While the laws made things legal, it didn't change people's hearts, unfortunately. Many states in the South ended up adopting Jim Crow laws, and some of those laws are like this. If they did, they had to have a partition between them. And white drivers had the right of way at all times, and the list goes on and on. And I think the thing that's most significant to me about Martin Luther King's upbringing and his parents' influence is that they didn't teach him to hate. They didn't teach him to hate the white man, any person. Even though they were discriminated against and hated because of their skin color, they didn't hate their persecutors. They considered their persecutors to be just as equal and valuable as they were. And that didn't mean that they condoned prejudice at all. But they believed every person has a value because they have a God-given value and they should be treated as such. And that's staggering with our culture today. We forget this part of Martin Luther King's message. that hatred done to one person does not justify hatred as a response, nor does it take away the value of anyone as a human being. And that's really Martin Luther King Jr.'s message. That's what his mother told him when his best friends deserted him out of prejudice. That's what his father told him and demonstrated to him in both his work and his words. He wanted equality.
When Martin Luther King Jr. was killed April 4th, 1969, 4 days later, Mrs. King still led her husband's planned march through Memphis to support striking sanitation workers. She stayed phenomenally strong after her husband's death, still being an activist and lobbying a campaign to make every third Monday of January Martin Luther King Day, a federal holiday now, which began in 1983. She founded and ran Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change and made the area of his surrounding home, birthplace, a National Historic Site in 1981. The life and activism did not stop this great woman when her great husband passed, and we have to remember activism cannot stop no matter how big or small you are in the public eye, because injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere.
Season 3, Episode 108, Remembering Kobe Bryant.
Coming up on this episode of the Intern Whisperer Live, we're going to be remembering Kobe Bryant.
Follow your passion first. When I retired from the game, I sat there asking kind of all the wrong questions. What's the biggest industry I can get into? And it's all the wrong stuff. And you got to sit there and ask yourself, okay, what am I truly passionate about? What do I enjoy doing? And when you feel that way, you feel like you have never worked a day in your life. It's the most fun thing in the world. You get up in the morning excited about what you're doing. And you got to be really honest with yourself about it. If you wake up in the morning and you're dreading going to work, dude, do something else. Right. Do something else. And those are hard decisions to make. But when you make those decisions, it's a very liberating experience. And you find out that the rewards will come.
I think the best way to prove your value is to work, is to learn, is to absorb, to be a sponge. But you always want to outwork your potential. As hard as you believe you can work harder than that.
Kobe Bean Bryant was born on August 23rd in 1978 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Our country mourns the loss of this great athlete and a man who died on January 26th this year, 2020. Kobe was an American professional basketball player who helped lead the Los Angeles Lakers of the National Basketball Association to 5 championships. His father, Joe Jelly Bean Bryant, was a professional basketball player who spent 8 seasons in the NBA and 8 more playing in Italy, where Bryant went to school. Kobe spent 8 years of his childhood being raised in Italy after his father was uprooted the family so he could carry on playing semi-pro basketball. Unsurprisingly, Bryant is fluent in Italian, and it's thought that his love for the game stemmed from his time in Europe. When his family returned to the United States, Kobe played basketball at the Lower Merion High School in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, where he received several National Player of the Year awards and broke the Southeastern Pennsylvania scoring record set by Wilt Chamberlain with 2,883 points. Kobe opted to forego college and declared himself eligible for the NBA draft when he graduated from high school. The Charlotte Hornets chose him with the 13th pick of the 1996 draft. He was traded to the Lakers shortly thereafter and became the second youngest NBA player in history when the 1996-97 season opened. He quickly proved his merit with the Lakers and was selected for the NBA All-Star Game in just his second season, becoming the youngest All-Star player. What was the reaction to his death? Central Floridians shared these thoughts about him.
Man, RIP to the GOAT, man. Kobe Bryant was one of my favorite players growing up.
Oh, I was like shocked. I was not an NBA player, an NBA fan or nothing, but I knew he was a legendary athlete.
You realize that at the end of the day, that could actually happen to anybody. Ain't no one's safe in this world. That's why you gotta live your dream the way you want to live your dream. At least he was able to live his dream.
Oh, that was shocking. That was like very shocking because no basketball player died yet.
Yeah, but yeah, man, RIP to the GOAT, man. Loved Kobe. We loved his daughter as well. Yeah, man, blessings and prayers.
His daughter's death hit me more on a personal level.
Everyone was heartbroken, and it's just not a great way to start off 2020. And so many other people, you know, passing away too. It's not the greatest thing in the world. And he was a legend and will always be remembered as a legend. And he's really loved by everybody and will always be. My prayers just go to him and his family and every single one of his fans.
Kobe's basketball career. Bryant entered the National Basketball Association directly from high school, and he played his entire 20-season professional career in the league with the Los Angeles Lakers. In 2008 and 2012 Olympics, Kobe represented the United States and won gold medals both times, playing alongside big names like Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and LeBron James. Bryant won 5 NBA championships. He was an 18-time All-Star, a 15-time member of the All-NBA team, a 12-time member of the All-Defensive team, and was named the 2008 NBA Most Valuable Player. That's the MVP. And was also the 2-time NBA Finals MVP winner. Widely regarded as one of the greatest players of all time, he led the NBA in scoring during 2 seasons and ranks 4th on the league's all-time regular season scoring and all-time postseason scoring list. When Kobe left basketball, both numbers he wore during his career, 8 and 24, was retired by the Lakers on December 18th, 2017.
So Kobe had an entrepreneurial mindset, and many people may not have been aware of that. He established Kobe Inc. as his own company, and it was there to grow brands in the sports industry. The initial investment was a 10% stake in the Body Armor Super Drink Company for $6 million in March of 2014. His headquarters were in Newport Beach, California, with Coca-Cola purchasing a minority stake in the company in August 2018. The valuation of Bryant's stake rose to approximately $200 million. Kobe's main goal, as of now, was focusing on his $100 million investment fund, which he had set up with Jeff Steibel. The company was called Bryant Steibel, and it was a very unexciting name, but it was aimed to invest in and expand tech, media, and data companies. So far, brands such as LegalZoom, Scopely, the Players Tribune, and Alibaba have been kept afloat thanks to Bryant Steibel. On August 22, 2016, Bryant and his business partner, Jeff Steibel, launched Bryant Steibel, a venture capital firm focused on different businesses including media, data, gaming, and technology with $100 million in funding.
In 2015, Bryant wrote the poem Dear Basketball. And 2 years later, it served as the bias for a short film of the same name, which he also narrated. The work won an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, and in 2018, Bryant published the book, The Mamba Mentality, How I Play, in which he describes his approach to basketball. The title reflected a nickname he bestowed upon himself during his playing days, the Black Mamba. Together, his wife, Bryant, funded the Kobe and Vanessa Bryant Family Foundation, KVBFF, and its goal are helping young people in need, encouraging the development and physical and social skills through sports, and assisting the homeless. Bryant spoke of the injustice aimed at homeless people who are blamed for the situation, saying that homelessness should not be ignored or made a low priority. Bryant said he wanted more out of the life than just a successful basketball career, but more in general.
So as we wrap up our show, we're going to talk about Bryant here in our own studio. And so what was that impact? How did you feel when you had heard that he had passed away? Johnny?
I was down south in Fort Lauderdale at a post-wedding party. We were all around the pool, drinking it up, having a good time. And someone was mumbling like Kobe died. And I said, no, guys, that's impossible. Stop talking like that. And then everyone just starts pulling out their phone, Googling. And it was true. And like that moment, my heart just sunk to my stomach. I couldn't believe it. And then to find out that he was on the plane with his daughter on their way to basketball practice was just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking to know that, like, you never know when your time is. And it was really, really sad. I'm still shocked today, like days later, that Kobe is gone. He's not here anymore. And you just never know.
That is true. With just this little memory of Kobe Bryant, but we always want to give thanks to Valencia College for being able to be here. There's lots of Kobe Bryant fans here, and thank you for all of our listeners. So go ahead and let's close on that really great speech that Kobe had to share.
Once upon a time, there was a young basketball player who had dreams of becoming one of the greatest basketball players of all time. 17 years old, with the hunger, the motivation, and the desire to be the best possible basketball player that I could be. I have decided to skip college and take my talent to the NBA. Sense of purpose. No, a sense of purpose was there ever since I was a kid. I knew exactly. I felt like I knew what God put me on this earth to do. I just played the game of basketball. I just loved it so much. And once I came to the NBA and I looked around, I saw all the guys that weren't working as much as I was. Then I started to understand that, you know, how I went about it is hard work. To me, it was just, I just love what I do, so I want to do it as much as possible. You know, now it's time to go in there and it's time to do some work. Can I look inside and say, okay, what was the genesis for me? Who inspired me to get to this point? You know, when I face adversity and I look at it as a challenge or an opportunity, where did that come from? You know, who did I learn that from?
Did you set goals when you started in the NBA? Did you have goals at that point? Certain things that you wanted to do?
Yeah, it was really simple for me at the time, which is win as many championships as possible. I want more. I want to learn this thing some more. There's got to be another level, you know? And it was just beyond exciting.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
Season 3, Episode 109, LaKesha Womack.
Welcome to the Intern Whisperer Live. Today, we have LaKesha Womack. LaKesha, how are you today?
I am doing well. How are you?
Very well, very well. It's nice talking to you. We have her on a Skype call.
Okay, so our show is all about business, the future of industries and jobs. So tell us about your first job. What was it like? How did you get it? And how did it get you to where you are now? You can include that whole entrepreneurial story because you've got a good story.
Okay, awesome. So my first job was actually working in retail. I worked for a clothing store my first semester in college, and I started working there because I had attended a boarding school for high school, and I really wanted to move out of the dorms when I went to college. And so I started working in a clothing store, but quickly realized that that was not my path to financial independence because I was spending more money on clothes than I was actually saving. So that taught me a very valuable lesson. But through the years, I've worked in retail, financial services, the publishing industry, and all of those jobs prepared me to become a consultant because I learned a lot of business basics, and I've been able to apply those to my client businesses, whether they're starting a retail business or if they're looking to start a bakery or what have you. There's some basic principles that are the same across industries. I've been consulting for 15 years this year. So it's been a very exciting journey. And about 10 years ago, I did go through a rebranding. And as we were discussing in the pre-show, I had to decide if I wanted to integrate my faith with my consulting. And I realized that there was no way I could do this without having my faith to play a large role in the work that I was doing. So I pray for my clients. I can't do the work that I do for them without praying for them and just understanding like the role that our faith plays in the goals and the visions that we have. And within the past couple of years, I've also begun doing some consulting with churches. And so that ties into some of the books that we'll be discussing later in the show.
So that's really interesting. I find that people don't always talk about their faith. You know, they're afraid that they're going to offend somebody, or they're going to feel like, oh, well, they'll think that I'm trying to convert them. And instead of just worrying what somebody else is thinking, we should just go ahead and just say, hey, you know, my faith, you know, belief in God, it's a part of my life. And so I talk about it as openly as I do with, you know, like your kids and your spouse. So nothing wrong with that. Totally get it. But what was interesting that you shared with our listeners is that you saw an opportunity by working with churches that you said that most of them did not really have consultants come in, and they don't always think about the church as a place. It is a business. It is there to be able to make money, employ people, and be able to pay those people. So when we say make money, it's not like in the sense of what is the profit and loss statement, what is the, you know, the revenue and the margins and all of that good stuff. But yet it does come into play with nonprofits and also churches and governments. We have to be responsible stewards, right?
Oh, definitely. And I think, you know, a lot of times we assume that because people have certain gifts, that makes them great at everything. And so a person can be a very skilled pastor and have a pastoral heart, or be a great preacher and be able to orate really well, but not have great administrative skills. Or they can have a vision and not be able to communicate that vision clearly to their congregation. And so having a consultant come in helps to assess what the strengths and weaknesses are of that church, and then help them to build on those things. And that's the same thing that we do in business and with nonprofits. But I don't think a lot of churches have really taken the time to say, like, hey, we need an evaluation as well, so that we can be the best organization that we can be for our communities and for our congregations.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So when you started working with a church, and I really like this whole conversation that we're having here, was it with your own church, or did you reach out and another church brought you in? How did that happen?
It was actually another church that brought me in. They saw what I had been doing with businesses, and they said, hey, do you think you can come and help my church? And so I said, sure. And much like working with businesses where you think that the growth strategy is going to be, you need to go and get more customers, you need to go and get more people. The same issue was true with churches. It was about figuring out how do we retain the people that we already have and make them more loyal to the organization so that they do word of mouth advertising for us. And a lot of times churches kind of miss out on that. So they're so focused on doing outreach that they're not doing a great job of servicing the customers that they already have in their congregations, to the point that they go and bring more people in. So it was very interesting to be able to apply a lot of the business principles in a spiritual space.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So did you go to college? What was your major if you went?
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt, and it was in political science. And following graduation, I actually worked on my first campaign as a campaign manager. And I'm very proud to say he is in the Tennessee General Assembly to this day. So that was definitely one of the highlights of my career, working with Reverend Harold Love. And he's actually a pastor who ran for a state house position that his father had previously occupied.
Vanderbilt. I've always, wow. You throw that college name out there, that's those Ivy League schools. That's awesome. That's one of those places that I go, ooh, I'd like to go and tour it. Tell me what Vanderbilt is like, because I live vicariously through others.
Vanderbilt was a great experience. I wasn't one of those who knew what I wanted to do with my life. And as I mentioned earlier, I went to a public boarding school. I'm in Alabama. We have the School of Math and Science system. And most of my friends were going to into engineering, or they wanted to be doctors. And I really had no clue. And so I figured at that point that it would be best if I went to a top 25 school, because once you kind of throw those names out there, like no one really asks, like, well, what was your major or what was your GPA? Like they just assume that, you know what you're talking about. And it has, served me well these past 20 years having that on my resume. But the campus is absolutely beautiful, and the knowledge that I gained and just like the level of academic rigor that we went through has really helped me in my writing ability and my presentations and, just my ability to navigate the business world. And I don't think I realized it at the time, just how prepared that experience made me for all of the things that came after graduation. Having me, I really enjoyed the conversation.
So why do women join these leagues?
It's really interesting. I've actually been a part of some webinars about women who want to learn fantasy sports to be a part of their company camaraderie, that they feel left out.
Interesting.
Yeah,
part of the company culture.
Yep. So they feel like they're missing out on bonding with their coworkers or being in the know. And so Smith College is actually leading a webinar this spring even about that, how people can learn and be involved and take part.
Anything else that you think that our listeners should know about regulating this as a sport?
Yeah, so I know that there was an act in 2006 that's what specified fantasy sports are not gambling. There is that certain amount of skill, and that has to be a part of the game because that determines legality of what state it can be in. Also, like payment processors. I mean, we're not touching gambling or anything like that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there's a website that I follow that, every day, every week, they're updating the latest status of legality of fantasy sports. Again, the daily fantasy sports, which is DraftKings and FanDuel, those are the ones that in 9 states you can't have it at all. And then others you have to pay licensing fees. I do think Florida's kind of still a gray area in that. But every month it's updating and changing and laws are being passed. So.
What do you think the future of fantasy sports looks like 10, 20 years from now? Because I pulled that statistic also, and this is a lot of people, and you've already told me more than 32 million are playing. So,
yeah, so currently I think the last stat was 59.3 million people play fantasy sports. And what's really neat for what we're doing is that apart from the WNBA, that's all men's leagues. And so women are starting and going to be able to hopefully make that climb and get to that level. I think that there is a lot of shift to sports betting as that becomes more legal. A lot of people are going to shift there because just for a company, the ability to make money is going to be endless there. So it's going to be really interesting. My hope is that in 10 years, fantasy sports is as big a business for women's leagues as it is currently for men's. The fun of watching a game and playing fantasy sports is going to be equal. So I think that it'll hopefully have a big name in the industry.
What does a typical day look like for an intern that works with She Plays?
Yeah, we have 4 wonderful interns that have started with us this spring. And I know, so Thursdays are days that we come together and we meet at Starter Studio. So another shout out to Starter Studio. But they come in and we have a joint meeting all together because we do want to have that family vibe of we're doing this together.
You're a team.
Yeah, and they're kind of the first team locally that we're building. And so it's really neat to have them be a part. And they do all sorts of stuff. There's graphic design, social media, audio engineer, and video / on-air talent.